Fellas, there's a few countries in the UFC that have stereotypes tied to them. This can just be the way that they fight or the fighters that they are, but there's definitely a few countries in the UFC that have popular stereotypes just because of the fighters that they produce. I'm going to be going over a few in this video. Let me know if I missed any popular stereotypes from some countries out. The first country I've gone for is England. I guess you can include the whole of the UK for this, and the stereotype is that English fighters can't wrestle. Nowadays, it's not that big of a stereotype, but back in like 2020 below that, there was a massive stereotype that British fighters couldn't really wrestle, mainly because a lot of them were strikers, and the face of UK MMA used to be Darren Till, and if you know anything about Darren Till, his grappling is dreadful. I mean, the guy literally trained with Hamzat, hyping his comeback for about a year, comes back and gets dominated by Dricus, got dominated by Derek Brunson. His grappling's never really been good as Darren Till. We also had Bisping, who was more of a striker. He didn't have terrible grappling, but he was more of a striker. Even Leon Edwards, before the current Leon Edwards era, his grappling was never amazing. He used to be more of a type of guy to just try and keep it on the feet rather than try and engage in grappling. So English fighters, they've always had this big stereotype that they can't wrestle, and I feel like it comes from the fact that in England there's just not many big wrestling gyms. I mean, you go to America, they've got college wrestling, they've got all these different wrestling gyms, but in the UK we don't really have that. There's no really wrestling gyms. There's a few jiu-jitsu gyms, but that's about it. So overall, English fighters not being able to wrestle, it's always been a big stereotype, but I feel like nowadays it doesn't really work. I mean, we've got Tom Aspinall, who's a grappler. We've got Lerone Murphy, Nathaniel Wood, who can grapple as well. Leon Edwards nowadays has improved his grappling a lot, so I feel like nowadays, not so much, but definitely back in the day, English fighters not being able to wrestle was a big stereotype. Next country, Russia, and I'm going to specifically talk about Dagestan, but because it's in Russia, I'll include Russia. But the stereotype amongst Dagestani fighters is that they're boring wrestlers. I feel like, again, nowadays this doesn't really work, but I say back in the day, but it was only a few years ago when this stereotype was really popular. It was mainly the Khabib era. Khabib, obviously, he used to be known for his dominant grappling. Nowadays, Dagestani fighters, we've got people like, Ankalaev, Islam Makhachev, Umar Nurmagomedov. We've just got a bunch of Dagestanis who are willing to strike on the feet. I did a video about this not long ago, but back in the Khabib era, when Khabib was just dominating everyone with his grappling, Islam was, using his grappling as well in his as he was climbing the rankings, Umar Nurmagomedov as well. Dagestanis were just labelled as boring wrestlers, crotch sniffers, you name it. That's kind of what they were known for, and to be honest, there's still a lot of fans nowadays that still kind of think they're, these boring wrestlers, but I feel like they've kind of evolved their skill to kind of get past that era. But I don't blame you for thinking that about Khabib, because even though he did finish a lot of his opponents, he was definitely more of a dominant wrestler more than a balanced fighter or a striker. He was definitely had a wrestling game plan, but Dagestanis being boring wrestlers, it's always been this big stereotype tied to Dagestan fighters, and that might be why not a lot of people watch them. But like I said about 50 times now, they've definitely changed their style nowadays. But that's the one stereotype about Dagestani fighters. Next country, Ireland. Trying to be McGregor so badly is the stereotype. And this isn't just in the UFC, this is in any martial art, even in boxing. I feel like in boxing, in MMA, whenever there's a new Irish fighter, the second they speak, or the second they try and, become a popular fighter, but whenever they try and raise their profile, instantly compared to McGregor. You can go on any Irish fighter who's at a press conference or talking trash, you read the comment section, all they're saying is, oh, he's trying to be McGregor so badly. I feel like if it's 2024 and you've got an Irish accent and you're trying to be a big star, you cannot be a big star unless you're going to get compared to McGregor. Every Irish fighter, specifically, especially in boxing as well, but no matter who you are, if you're Irish, it's always trying to be the McGregor so badly or trying to be the next McGregor. They never let you be a person of your own, even if you're nothing like McGregor and you've just got an Irish accent and you talk trash. Everyone just gets compared to McGregor. That's the big stereotype. But to be honest, again, I don't really blame him. McGregor's the biggest star in MMA history, one of the biggest stars in combat sports history, and he is Irish. And there's not much Irish stars anyway. That we've got Ian Gary outside of McGregor in MMA at least. We've got a few in boxing, and that's about it. So I don't really blame a lot of the fans thinking that, but yeah, it's a big stereotype that kind of ties within Irish fighters that I've been noticing. Anyway, next country, Brazil. Now, this isn't more of a, personality type. This is more of a style. I feel like the style of great striking and great jiu-jitsu is definitely amongst a lot of Brazilian fighters. I mean, back in the day, Anderson Silva, the Axe Murderer, Vitor Belfort, even like if we go more recent, Jose Aldo, Charles Oliveira, Davison Figueiredo. I feel like a lot of Brazilians, and this is a stereotype that you can even talk about nowadays, everyone assumes that they've always got this style of great striking and great jiu-jitsu with no in between. Never great wrestling, just great striking and great jiu-jitsu. I mean, I don't blame her for the jiu-jitsu thing. I mean, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, obviously, it comes from Brazil in a no-brainer. So Brazil, jiu-jitsu's massive in Brazil, obviously striking as well. Brazilians are known for having amazing striking. We've got Anderson Silva, one of the best strikers in UFC history from Brazil. Jose Aldo, even Charles Oliveira right now at lightweight. Brazilians have always been known for having great striking, great jiu-jitsu, and I feel like if you see a Brazilian fighter and you have no idea about the background, who they are, you can assume that they've got a good level of jiu-jitsu and some great striking as well. So I feel like that's the stereotype that fits a lot of Brazilians. And yeah, one of the few stereotypes that still make sense today. It's not like this is kind of, it doesn't make sense anymore. It's not like the Brazilians have massively changed their game. To this day, you can still talk about this stereotype. Most have really dangerous striking and amazing jiu-jitsu. So that's the one stereotype I guess you can kind of talk about when you're talking about Brazilian fighters. It's a good bet if you're watching a Brazilian fighter to assume that they've got good striking and great jiu-jitsu. So that's the one for Brazil. Next country, Canada, the next GSP, kind of similar to Ireland and McGregor. Canadian fighters, I feel like whenever there's a new hot prospect in Canada, whether it be Mike Mallet, Charles Jourdain, the first thing a lot of fans always say is that they're going to be the next GSP. I've noticed that a lot, especially with Mike Mallet, on his build-up to his fight with Neil Magny and in his previous fights. I feel like whenever people are talking about these new Canadian stars, always tied with GSP, and again, kind of like Ireland, Canada aren't that great at MMA. We haven't had that much. We haven't had that much. These big MMA stars come from Canada. Besides, obviously, one of the greatest of all time in GSP. So whenever there's a new prospect, always compared to GSP. Imagine that being in every other country. Like imagine every time, I don't know, a Brazilian fighter started being up and coming, they got compared to Silva. Or if, an American fighter that starts doing well, they just got compared to Jones. And to be honest, like I said, I don't really blame people for doing so because Canada, all they're really known for is GSP when it comes to MMA. But it's quite annoying how every single Canadian fighter always tied within GSP. They're going to be the next GSP, not going to be the first fighter under their name, always going to be the next GSP. So that's one thing I've noticed about Canadian fighters. But yeah, that is my overall list of stereotypes from countries in the UFC. I feel like there's definitely a few more in other countries, but these are the main ones I've noticed. I've picked up on myself. I've picked up from other fans talking about it. So let me know if you've noticed that there's any other stereotypes from countries in the UFC or in any combat sport, because like I said with Ireland, I feel like in boxing specifically there's a lot of Irish boxers that can get compared to McGregor. But yeah, let me know if there's any stereotypes that you think fit within a certain country or that fighters are kind of labelled towards, that whether it be the style, whether it be the personality, whatever it may be. Let me know what stereotypes you think come from countries. It's my personal opinion. Let me know if you agree.